The movie begins with some children asking a man to tell them another story. The man tells the kids about the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, and says they vanquished all the villains that stood against them. They formed families after the world was safe and eventually had children. Time passes and a villain named Ultron returns with the intent of ruling the world. The Avengers stood against him but were no match. So they sent their children to safety with hopes that a time will come when they can stand against Ultron and save the world. The children fall asleep as they listen to the story. 12 years later, Pym flies around and Azari moves through the woods as he follows him. Azari hits him with electricity and tags him as they play a game of tag. The man, who is Tony Stark, watches as the kids train. Torunn speaks to Thor's grave, and Henry tries to lift her sword. She throws it at him as he dodges, and Azari tells her that she's meant to run from them and not attack them. They then wonder where James is and find him still asleep in his room. Azari uses his electricity to wake up, but James pushes him into a puddle of mud using his shield. James says he's going back to bed and they tell him he is being mean. He tells her that Thor abandoned her while their parents are dead, and Torunn gets and attacks him. Tony emerges and stops the kids from fighting. He instructs them to return to their houses and tries talking to James, but James reminds him that he isn't his father. They walk to their houses and alarms suddenly go off. Tony instructs the kids to stay in James's room until he says they are safe to come out. The kids stay in James's room and it is extremely untidy. A strange robot suddenly phases through the wall and startles the kid. They prepare to attack the robot, but it falls to the ground. Tony rushes inside and says the man is Vision. He assists him as he walks and assures the kids that he will give them answers to all their questions. Tony takes Vision to a secret lair that's under the fountain, and the kids watch from a bush. They decide to follow him, but Azari tries to stop them, and Torunn absorbs his electricity. Henry opens the secret lair, and the kids walk into it. James says he has been in that room and remembers holding the rail. They suddenly bump into several robots that represent the Avengers, and they wonder why Tony kept it a secret from them. Henry then remembers that Tony called the robot Vision, and he says he is a member of the Avengers. They decide to continue spying on Tony, but James stands and stares at Captain America. Azari and Henry enter a room and watch as Tony talks to Vision while repairing him. Vision says Ultron has taken over Europe and says Clint's son is alive. James stares at the robots, which are the Iron Avengers, and tries talking to them. He accidentally activates the robots, and they decide to carry out their assigned mission. James tries to stop the robots, but they ignore him and walk to a launching pad. Henry falls as he watches Tony, and Azari saves him. Tony sees them and asks what they are doing in the lair. The building begins to shake as the Iron Avengers launch, and Ultron detects their presence. James and Torunn rush to Tony and inform him of what happened as he sees the Ultron is on their radar. The Iron Avengers fly into the sky, and Ultron emerges as he knocks down Iron Giant Man and corrupts Iron Widow. Tony instructs the kids to take Vision's head and get to the control room. Torunn says they shouldn't leave Tony and Vision, informs them that Ultron will be on his way to attack them because he has the ability to corrupt machines. The roof suddenly breaks, and there is a large hole in the sky. Ultron lands in front of the kids and sees that they are a potential threat and tries to eliminate them. Iron Man emerges and hits Ultron away. He then uses his unibeam to knock Ultron down, and he instructs the kids to escape while he holds Ultron back, and Vision says they should obey Iron Man. They enter a building, and Vision activates the Quinjet that they are inside. They then fly out of the facility, and the kids are fascinated. Iron Man continues fighting Ultron, but gets knocked down, and the Iron Avengers, who are under Ultron's control, emerge. Henry and the others watch as Ultron captures Iron Man, and Vision tells them that he sacrificed himself to keep them safe. James blames himself for Ultron's attack. Torunn says they'll have to go after Ultron, and Henry takes the controls. They move to Ultron City, but get attacked, and the Quinjet is destroyed. The kids enter Ultron City, and Torunn says they should fight the robots until they get to Ultron and defeat him. She rushes to attack some robots, and the others reluctantly join her because she doesn't have a choice. They get overwhelmed by the robots, and a strange person begins pulling them into the walls. The Iron Avengers emerge, and Iron Giant Man steps on Torunn. Iron Thor slams her to the ground, but a young boy emerges and saves her as they leave her sword behind. Ultron informs Tony that the kids are in the city and tortures him to get information about them. James wakes up and sees the others in a strange room. Some strange figures emerge, but Francis says that they have to keep moving before Ultron finds them. The kids ask Francis who he is, and he says Clint Barton is his dad. They realize that he is the son of an Avenger and tell him that he isn't the last Avenger. He asks them where they have been, as he says he has been fighting, and they say they had no idea of what was happening. They enter a building, and Francis says he is the leader of the Scavengers. They tell him he can help them save Tony from Ultron, and Francis says Ultron doesn't keep prisoners. A woman tells them that Tony is alive and being held in the Citadel, but Francis says they shouldn't listen to her because she is crazy. James asks him to assist them in getting to the Citadel, and he refuses. He asks Francis if his father gave up so easily, and he gets angry, but suddenly sees Torunn's face. He decides to tell them how to get there, but says they're on their own. James and the others climb to the surface, and Francis tells his people that they have to look out for themselves as they stare at him. James leads the others as they arrive on the surface and sneak around. They get to a moving tower that's headed for the Citadel, and Torunn flies them to the top. The tower attaches to the Citadel, and Azari uses his powers to open it up. The floor suddenly falls, but they make their way across and see some damaged gear that belongs to their parents. They then see more items belonging to fallen heroes and continue moving. They find Tony and free him from his restraints, but Ultron and the Iron Avengers emerge. Ultron says the kids must be destroyed, but Francis emerges and shoots him with an explosive arrow. Several scavengers emerge and attack the Iron Avengers, but Francis instructs them to escape. They eventually escape from the Citadel, and Tony tells them that he created Ultron for peace. A woman named Betty emerges and tells Tony that Hulk survived. She says that he is in the desert, and he won't help them because he is scared. Tony asks Francis if he can help them get out of the city, and Francis blames him for his father's death. Tony said that Clint would have hit him, but still helped, and Francis realizes that Tony knew Clint. They go to a pod, and Francis says Ultron will detect when it is activated. Tony reminds him that he made Ultron, and says he knows how to stop him from detecting them. The Savages tell Francis that they will buy them enough time, and they enter the ship. Betty tells Tony that he raised the kids to the best of his ability, and he says he should have done better. James asks Francis why he came back, and he says he has to take the chance he has at defeating Ultron. A man works on some plants in a cave, and Tony calls his name. The man, named Bruce Banner, asks them to leave and panics, but Betty calms him. Tony tells James that anger makes the Hulk come out, and Betty continues to calm him. Bruce sits with the others and tells him that the Hulk doesn't care about Ultron. Azari sees Torunn and the others sitting outside, and Torunn suggests they run and hide. James says they have to make a stand because Ultron will never stop hunting them, and says he has a plan. He suggests that they bring Ultron to them by using the ship, but Torunn refuses and flies away. James and the others enter the ship and activate it, and Tony sees what they have done. Torunn begs her dad for help and asks him to lend her his strength, but she doesn't get a reply. Meanwhile, Torunn's sword flies from the middle of Ultron City and lands in front of her. She thanks him for his help while Tony talks to the others. He tells them to attack the Iron Avengers' exposed joints, and Torunn enters the room. The Iron Avengers emerge and a fight ensues. Iron Giant Man knocks down Tony, but James catches him. Henry gets motivated and grows giant as he fights. Azari fights Iron Panther and knocks it down, but it transforms into a panther and attacks him. Torunn fights Iron Thor and he knocks her down, but she stops herself from hitting the ground and continues fighting. James fights Iron Captain America and sees as Iron Widow grows extra arms and turns her palms into guns. Henry knocks down Iron Giant Man and it releases multiple Iron Wasps that attack him. James instructs him to enter the cave and make Bruce angry so he can transform into the Hulk. Henry wonders how he'll make Bruce angry, and James tells him to make fun of him. He enters the cave and begins zapping Bruce with his lasers to anger him. The Iron Wasps enter the cave and attack Bruce, which gets him angry and makes him transform into the Hulk. Hulk emerges from the cave and destroys Iron Giant Man with one attack. He destroys Iron Widow, but Ultron emerges and knocks him down. He tells Hulk that he hasn't forgotten about him, and Hulk attacks him. Ultron begins hitting Hulk's pressure points and makes him unable to use his limbs. The kids begin to defeat their opponents, and Francis uses an explosive arrow to destroy the Iron Hawkeye. The team gathers together and watches as the Hulk falls in defeat. They decide to attack Ultron, but Henry gets knocked down. Azari uses his electricity against Ultron, but he absorbs it and fires it back at him. Torunn grabs her sword and tries to attack him, but it doesn't penetrate his armor. James knocks him down, but he stands up and shoots him with his laser. Henry tries to get the Hulk to stand up and begins saying that he is scared. He tells Hulk that he isn't afraid of a little robot, and Hulk gets up in anger. He begins hitting Ultron with a lot of force and rips him in half. He defeats Ultron, but rushes at the kids. He sees Betty standing by the cave and jumps to her. She drops Vision's head, and Hulk picks her up as he jumps away. Tony emerges and says Ultron was built to repair himself. Torunn says she'll take him somewhere he won't be able to come back, and she flies to space. Torunn passes out as she throws Ultron into space, and Thor emerges. He tells her he left her on Earth to gain humanity, and says she should come home. Torunn says she can't leave her family, and Thor tells her she is always welcome on Earth. She returns to the others in a new armor, and they all hug. Francis says there are over 1,000 robots that need to be defeated in Ultron City, and James assembles the new Avengers. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos, and please make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.